Okay, so are you ready to dive into some really fascinating stuff with me today?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, so we're doing a deep dive into this interview with Sadhguru. And, it's about mental health. And I know you're probably thinking like, oh, another one.
Right, right.
But trust me,
Yeah.
this one's different.
Okay.
Because we're talking about the potential for like a full-blown
Oh, wow.
mental health pandemic.
Mhm.
And the World Health Organization is like straight up predicting it.
Wow.
So that's kind of a big deal. And to make it even more real,
Yeah.
Sadhguru brought up this really crazy statistic from Japan during the peak of the 2020 pandemic.
Okay.
More people died from suicide than from the actual virus.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's heavy stuff, right?
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah, and I think, our expert here can really help us understand, like, what's at the root of all of this.
Yeah. So, what's really fascinating is that Sadhguru links this potential mental health crisis to how we've structured modern society. He says we're so fixated on external achievements,
Mm-hmm.
the promotion, the bigger house, constantly striving,
Yeah.
never really content. And he uses this really striking term. He calls it constipated expansion.
Okay, now constipated expansion.
Yeah.
That's a phrase that really made me, like, pause.
Right.
Can you break that down a little bit for us? What does that even mean, practically?
It's such a vivid image, right?
Yeah.
Think about it this way. Someone's always chasing a bigger salary,
Okay.
thinking more money equals security and happiness.
Yeah.
But even when they get that raise, they're immediately on to the next one.
Yeah.
Keeping up with the Joneses,
Uh-huh.
never content with what they have.
Yeah. Always reaching for something more.
Always reaching for more. That's constipated expansion.
Okay.
We're trying to cram limitless fulfillment into things that are ultimately limited.
I love that example because it's so relatable.
Right.
It's like we get trapped in this cycle of wanting more, never feeling like we're enough. It's like that expanding cubicle analogy that Sadhguru talks about.
Yes.
You get a slightly bigger space and you're like,
Relief.
for a moment. But then before you know it, you're like bumping into the walls again.
Exactly. And that's where Sadhguru brings in his solution.
Okay.
He says, stop trying to find fulfillment out there.
Okay.
Cultivate joy and well-being from within.
From within.
Yeah.
Okay, so he actually mentions this practice called inner engineering.
He does.
That can help with this. And it's only 21 minutes a day.
That's it.
Which, honestly, even for someone like me who's always on the go, sounds
Yeah, right.
pretty manageable.
Yeah, totally.
But I think the question a lot of people have is like, how does that actually work?
Yeah.
Can 21 minutes of meditation really make a difference when we're facing all this pressure and anxiety?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Sadhguru, he emphasizes that it's not about suppressing those feelings
Okay.
or pretending they're not there.
So we're not talking about becoming like emotionless robots then.
No, not at all. It's about developing the tools to actually manage those emotions effectively.
Okay, so can you give us an example of what that kind of emotional regulation looks like in practice?
Sure. So think about it like driving a car.
Okay.
You come to a red light, you don't jump out and start shaking the white pole.
I mean, sometimes.
You simply wait for it to change.
Okay.
Inner engineering gives you those tools to approach those difficult emotions with the same patience and composure.
I love that analogy
Yeah.
because it makes it so clear, like instead of getting swept away by those feelings,
Yeah.
we can learn to like create space between ourselves and the emotions.
Exactly.
That's pretty empowering.
It is. It's recognizing that you're not your thoughts and emotions.
Right.
You have the power to observe them, to understand them, and to choose how you respond.
Okay, but what about when life throws like the really big curveballs?
Yeah.
A serious illness, job loss, those moments when it feels like everything is falling apart.
Right.
Can inner peace really help in those situations?
Sadhguru actually addresses this directly.
Okay.
He says, when we're consumed by fear and anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
it clouds our judgment,
Okay.
makes it harder to respond effectively.
To those challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when we cultivate that inner stability,
Yeah.
we can approach those moments with more clarity and resilience.
So we make better decisions.
Yeah.
We can support ourselves and others better.
Absolutely.
And ultimately kind of navigate those storms with more grace.
Exactly. It's like if your mind is a whirlwind of anxious thoughts,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's hard to see the path forward.
You can't see clearly.
You can't. But when you calm that inner storm,
Yeah.
you create space to find solutions.
Okay, so there was this other part of the interview that I found really interesting, and I'm curious to get your take on it. He starts talking about this connection between soil health and mental well-being.
Okay.
And at first I was like, wait, what? Like, I get taking care of the environment, but I didn't really see the link
Right. Yeah.
to mental health.
It is an interesting connection.
So can you like shed some light on that for us?
Yeah, so this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Sadhguru is arguing that modern agricultural practices have depleted the soil,
Okay.
which directly impacts the nutritional value of our food.
Okay.
And he's saying that those nutritional deficiencies can actually contribute to mental health issues.
Wait, so you're telling me that the state of the soil could be impacting my mood, my focus, my mental well-being?
It sounds crazy, right?
It's wild.
But think about it this way. The soil is the foundation of our entire food system.
Right.
It's where our food gets its nutrients,
Okay.
its vitality, and we know that nutrition is key
Yeah.
for mental health.
Yeah.
So if the soil is depleted, lacking those essential nutrients,
Yeah.
wouldn't it stand to reason that our food would be less nutritious?
Right.
And that could impact our mental well-being?
Wow. It's like a chain reaction.
It is.
Depleted soil, less nutritious food, decline in mental health.
Exactly.
It really highlights how connected we are
Yeah.
to the natural world.
Absolutely. And this is why Sadhguru is so passionate about his Save Soil campaign.
Okay.
He's calling for a global movement to revitalize the soil.
So it's not just about saving the environment.
And not just about the environment.
It's about saving ourselves.
It's about us. It's about our well-being.
And I think this is where the conversation gets really powerful because it starts to bridge that gap between individual well-being and collective action.
I completely agree.
It's not just about me meditating in my little corner. It's about addressing these larger systemic issues that are at play.
Exactly. It's a much bigger picture.
This is so much to unpack,
It is.
but I think it's incredibly valuable.
It is.
It's giving us a whole new perspective on this potential mental health pandemic, looking beyond just individual solutions.
And we're going to delve even deeper into those solutions in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Okay, so we've been exploring some pretty heavy stuff like constipated expansion
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the link between soil health and our well-being.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, right?
It might even feel a little overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm wondering. Like, if we're so interconnected with the environment,
Right.
does that mean that our mental health is just kind of at the mercy of these forces outside of our control?
That's a really good question, and it makes sense to feel that way.
Yeah.
But Sadhguru actually offers a really empowering perspective.
Okay.
He says, well, we can't control everything that happens around us.
Mm-hmm.
We can cultivate a sense of inner stability.
Okay, so even if things are chaotic out there,
Mm-hmm.
we can create a sense of calm in here.
Exactly.
But I think the question is, how do we actually do that?
Right.
Because, you know, people hear inner engineering and they think
Right.
monks on a mountaintop meditating for years.
Right.
It doesn't feel very accessible.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think Sadhguru would agree that inner peace isn't about escaping the world
Okay.
or becoming some emotionless being.
Right.
It's about understanding the mechanics of your own mind
Mm-hmm.
and developing the skills to manage your thoughts and emotions.
So it's like learning to drive.
It's a lot like that,
At first, it's overwhelming.
right? All the pedals and the gears.
Yeah, all the things.
But with practice, it becomes second nature.
Right.
You learn to respond to the road conditions with ease and confidence.
Okay. I like that analogy. So it's not about like forcing our minds to be quiet or shutting down difficult emotions.
At all.
It's about navigating them with more skill,
Exactly.
more awareness.
Yeah, Sadhguru talks about how in the modern world, we're just bombarded with stimuli constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Information overload, social media notifications, work deadlines.
It's constant.
It never ends.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to just get swept away in that current of thoughts and emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But inner engineering helps you step back from that current.
So instead of being reactive, we can become more responsive.
Exactly.
We can choose how we engage with those thoughts and emotions
That's the goal.
rather than just being carried away by them.
Yeah, it's incredibly empowering.
It is empowering.
And one of the key practices he emphasizes is this 21-minute meditation technique.
Okay.
That's part of the inner engineering program.
Okay. Let's be real for a second.
Yeah.
A lot of people are probably thinking 21 minutes.
Yeah.
I barely have time to brush my teeth in the morning.
Right. I get it.
So what would you say to someone who's skeptical that such a small amount of time can actually make a difference?
I would say try it. What do you have to lose?
Okay.
Just 21 minutes a day, even for a week or two,
Okay.
and see how you feel. Sadhguru often compares it to taking a shower.
Okay.
You don't question whether a shower is worth it.
Right.
You just do it because it makes you feel better, more refreshed.
Right.
Inner engineering is like a shower for your mind.
A mental shower.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
It's such a simple way to think about it.
it is.
And it makes it seem a lot more doable.
Exactly.
It speaks to this idea of like making time for our mental health, just
Yeah.
like we make time for our physical health.
Exactly. And the beauty is you don't need any special equipment or a fancy studio.
Right.
You can do it anywhere, anytime. It's accessible to everyone.
So for someone who's new to meditation, what can they expect? What does this 21-minute practice involve?
It involves a specific breathing technique and guided meditation
Okay.
that help you cultivate a state of deep relaxation
Mm-hmm.
and inner awareness. It's not about emptying your mind or
Right.
forcing yourself to stop thinking.
Okay.
It's about learning to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment.
So just being present with them.
That's it.
That sounds really intriguing. But I think one of the biggest questions people have about meditation is like, does it really work? Is there like scientific evidence?
There's a growing body of research
Okay.
that shows the benefits of mindfulness practices.
Uh-huh.
Like the studies have shown that regular meditation can reduce stress,
Okay.
improve focus and concentration, boost emotional regulation, and even enhance empathy and compassion.
Wow. So it's not just like a feel-good woo practice.
No, it's not.
There's actual science to back it up.
There is, and it comes down to how these practices impact our brains.
Okay.
They help us rewire those neural pathways,
Wow.
strengthening the areas associated with self-awareness,
Okay.
emotional regulation, and resilience.
So we're literally changing our brains for the better
Wow.
by engaging in these practices.
It's a workout for your brain.
That's incredible. But if these practices are so powerful, why aren't we all doing them?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What are the barriers that prevent people from making that commitment to their mental well-being?
I think there are a few factors at play.
Right.
One is just a lack of awareness.
Okay.
A lot of people just aren't aware of how beneficial these practices can be.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the noise these days.
It really is.
There's so much information coming at us.
Exactly. And then there's the time factor.
Yeah.
We live in a culture that values busyness and productivity.
Right.
So carving out even 21 minutes for yourself can feel impossible.
I know that feeling.
But I think what we're starting to realize
Yeah.
is that making time for our mental health is not a luxury.
It's a necessity
It's an investment in our well-being and our ability to show up
in all areas of our lives.
in every area.
And then I think there's also just like a fear factor for some people.
Yeah.
They're intimidated by the idea of sitting in silence with their thoughts.
It can be scary.
Or they're afraid of what they might uncover.
But I think what Sadhguru offers is a really compassionate and accessible approach.
Okay.
He's not asking us to be perfect or to achieve some blissful state 24/7.
Right.
He's simply inviting us to become more aware,
Okay.
to develop a more skillful and compassionate relationship with our thoughts and emotions.
So for someone who's hearing this and thinking, okay, I'm ready to try, what's the first step?
First step, make a commitment.
Okay.
Decide that you're worth those 21 minutes. Set aside a time each day that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes to start, find a quiet space, sit comfortably, and begin.
And if someone wants to learn more about inner engineering specifically,
Yeah.
where can they go?
Sadhguru's website is a great resource.
Cool.
They offer online courses, in-person programs, and even free introductory sessions.
Fantastic. And we'll be sure to include links to those resources in our show notes.
Perfect.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to hold on to?
You have the power to cultivate inner peace and resilience even amidst the chaos of the world.
Okay.
It's not about escaping life's challenges. It's about developing the inner strength to meet them
With grace.
with more grace and clarity.
I love that message.
It's a good one.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this segment,
We have.
but there's still so much to explore.
There is.
Sadhguru talked about conscious breathing, connecting with nature, so much more.
And we'll dive into all of that in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Sadhguru's insights.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've already uncovered so much.
It's been fascinating, right?
Yeah.
All these different layers.
Yeah, and how interconnected it all is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Our well-being, the systems we create, even the planet's health.
And speaking of that interconnectedness, there was this one part that really stayed with me.
Oh, yeah.
He kept coming back to this idea that our mental well-being is tied to the well-being of the planet, and specifically the soil.
It is pretty mind-blowing, isn't it?
Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's not just talking about the environmental impact of bad soil.
Right.
He's linking it directly to human health.
Mm.
like our mental health specifically.
Yeah, it really pushes us to think outside the box on this.
It does. It really challenges those traditional boundaries.
When I first heard him talking about this, I was a little skeptical, I have to admit.
Yeah, I get that.
So what does the dirt have to do with my anxiety?
Right, right.
The more I thought about it, the more it started to make sense.
It's a perspective we often miss, but the soil, it's the base of our whole food system.
Yeah, it is.
It's where our food gets its nutrients, its life force.
Right, and we know good nutrition is so important for mental health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if the soil is depleted, lacking all the good stuff,
Yeah.
our food's going to be less nutritious too, and that could affect our minds.
Right, so it's like this domino effect.
Kind of, yeah. Depleted soil, less nutritious food, and then maybe a dip in mental health.
It's crazy how connected we are to the natural world.
It really is, and that's exactly why he's so passionate about Save Soil.
That's right.
He's calling for this huge global shift to revitalize the soil, because it's not just an environmental issue.
Right. It's a human issue, a mental health issue.
It's about all of us.
And I think this is where the conversation gets really powerful again, because it connects individual well-being with taking action together.
Absolutely.
It's not just about me meditating by myself. It's realizing that we have to address these big systemic things too.
Exactly. It's about that bigger picture.
It's not just about saving the environment. It's about saving ourselves too.
It's about all of us, our well-being.
And that's why I think this part is so important. It bridges that gap between what we can do personally and what we need to do as a society.
I completely agree. It's about taking responsibility, both individually and collectively.
Sadhguru also talked about connecting with nature as a way to nourish our mental and emotional well-being.
Yes, he did.
And we hear that a lot, but I think in this context, it takes on a whole new meaning.
It does. We've become so detached from nature, stuck inside on screens.
Yeah, we have.
And I think that really adds to the isolation, the anxiety that so many people are feeling.
It's like we've forgotten that we're part of nature, that we actually evolved in nature.
Exactly. Our bodies and minds are meant to thrive in nature.
Right. And when we get back to that, even for a few minutes, like a walk in the park, sitting under a tree, it's like hitting reset.
It really is like a breath of fresh air for your whole being.
Yeah. I feel more grounded, more at peace.
I think there's something about nature that reminds us of the rhythms of life.
Right.
The constant change, the ebb and flow.
Yeah. It's like a reminder that we're part of something so much bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly healing when we're feeling lost or overwhelmed.
That sense of awe and wonder you feel in nature.
Yes.
It's like it helps us connect to our own inner spaciousness.
That's beautifully said. It reminds us that we're not just these isolated beings separate from everything else.
Yeah, we are part of this huge interconnected web.
Exactly.
And that brings us full circle, doesn't it?
It does.
This whole conversation about cultivating inner peace and resilience, understanding our connection to the world around us, and taking action to create a world that supports well-being.
It's about recognizing that our mental health isn't just an individual thing.
It's a collective thing.
It affects us all. And the solutions have to be collective too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the message you want to leave our listeners with?
You have the power to create inner peace and well-being, and you have the power to help build a healthier, more sustainable world.
And those two things are not separate.
They're deeply connected.
That's a beautiful message, and it gives me hope,
Me too.
We're not just victims of circumstance. We have choices. We can make a difference.
Absolutely. And even small changes can have a ripple effect.
They really can.
Whether it's committing to those 21 minutes, spending more time in nature, or even just advocating for better practices in your community.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
I hope it's given you some new insights and inspired you to take action in your own life.
I hope so too.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for being here. Keep questioning, keep exploring, keep diving deep. Until next time.